Hi everyone, this is Ben Tolosa and this is the Red Interview episode number 2 with filmmaker and author Chris Esper.
When wine enters, out goes the truth. Benjamin Franklin. This isn't your cliché movie industry podcast, and he is not your cliché host. This is The Red Interview, hosted by actor, photographer, filmmaker, and writer Ben Tolosa.
Good. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Pretty good. So, this is episode number 2. Okay? And we are doing video for the first time. I'm doing video for the 1st time, so this is kind of a big test for me.
Nice.
But it's good to have you.
Oh, thanks for having me on board. Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you if you remember how we met.
Yeah, it was kind of through a mutual friend of mine was on your show previously, Phil. And so he told me about the show, how much fun he had on it. So then I think I reached out to you first, and I said, oh, if you're looking for more interviewees, I'd love to be on it. And then, that's when I think some time went by before you were actually able to have me on. So then we were able to finally do it.
Yeah, cool. So, the show is all about you and your filmmaking career, and I wanted to ask you, so I was reading your IMDb, and you're originally from New Jersey.
Yep. And
then you moved to somewhere in Massachusetts?
Yeah, first I moved to Rhode Island when I was 14 years old, and that just came about because it was a change in my family, things were shifting and changing. So then so my parents, my sister, my whole family basically, we all just moved up to Rhode Island, and my grandmother moved in with us until she passed away in 2009, I want to say. Yeah, so then we've just been here ever since. So basically we moved up to take care of her, really.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And how did what was it about filmmaking that really kind of captivated your soul, or when you were like a little boy, or what happened?
Little boy, yeah. I just always had a fascination with film and TV, and always went to the video store growing up. That was like one of my favorite things to do. Because where I lived in Jersey, there was a video store right across the street from where I lived, so I would just walk there and just rent movie after movie, all these different on VHS too, and if everyone remembers those.
Yeah. And
so I would just go and I would just rent all these movies and just fill my mind with all these images and information. And then I had a computer, so I would go on IMDb like nonstop for hours and hours on end, and just reading about all these different movies, all these directors and actors. And around 10 years old, I really got into the movie Ghostbusters. It was one of my favorites growing up. And so then when I discovered that 2 of the actors were also the writers of the film, I thought, wow, that's really interesting. And at the time, I really wanted to be an actor. I didn't have any aspiration to be a director. I didn't even know what a director did, what a director was. I just wanted to be in front of the camera. My idol at the time, I was a young kid. My idol was Rob Williams. He was always my favorite actor and comedian, and so I wanted to be like him. I wanted to follow in his footsteps and be an actor and comic. And so with Ghostbusters, when I discovered that 2 of the actors also wrote the script, I thought, oh, well, I could do that, 10 years old. And so I wrote a script about a boy and his robot, because I love science fiction and I loved comedy, so I kind of went into the same vein as Ghostbusters, where it was like a sci-fi comedy, and I wrote this little screenplay. It was like only 30 pages long, and then I went on IMDb, I found the producer's name off the credits, and I thought, okay, I'm going to send my script to this guy, since he produced Ghostbusters, so why not? It seems logical enough. And so, 10 years old, I'm sending my 30-page script to Columbia Pictures.
That's cool.
And so I did that. I told my fourth grade friends, "Oh, guys, we're gonna make a movie," you know, and everybody wanted it, and it was an exciting time, and so, but not knowing how the movie business worked, of course, you know, the script was sent back to me because you know that I had. I had no idea you needed an agent, you needed this, you needed that, and plus knowing me, I probably just mailed it into the wrong place, so then it came back with return to sender stamped on it. But like I didn't see it as a rejection or anything like that. Like my passion like really never ceased because of that, and so I kind of went to that direction of continuing to do acting and comedy, and then when I got into high school, I did acting a little more seriously. I was in the drama club and did that for all 4 years and was interested in that. And I also did try my hand at stand-up comedy when I was around that age. I think I was like 16, maybe 17 years old when that happened, but I ultimately felt that it wasn't truly for me. I felt that it eventually I started all the while I was becoming quite a movie buff, so I just started seeing movies more as an art form rather than just a form of entertainment. And so with that in mind, I started watching more films, and one of the films that made me want to make movies was Raging Bull by Martin Scorsese, and I think it's a masterpiece.
Absolutely,
it's an absolute masterpiece. And so when I watched that movie for the first time, I just was entranced by the way it was shot, the way it was made, the acting, the story, just the whole thing all around. And then listening to Martin Scorsese's passion for cinema, how he feels about it, it's contagious. It's so contagious to hear him talk about movies. And just his, when he talked about what he intended to do with that film, influences that he had, that's why I decided, that's where I belong. I want to make movies. I want to tell stories through cinema. And, I discovered that if I do movies, I could combine every art form that I love. Because not only did I try acting and animation and writing, but I also dabbled in photography. I dabbled in puppetry and animation.
I read that.
Yeah. And I dabbled in all these different art forms, so I thought, if I could take all those art forms, I could combine that all into one medium, that being film. So, that's kind of why I got into filmmaking.
So, in those early days, how did you get a hold of your first camera? Is that something that a family member had, or how did you, or what was the camera?
Yeah, the camera was a Canon DC-210. It shot on mini DVDs, and I think, and it was only like a $300 camera. I want to say I got it for a birthday when I was 17, and so and at the time YouTube was new. The whole idea of uploading your content to the internet for an audience to see, that had never been done before. So it was a very new and innovative time for everybody. I think, but. I got my first camera. I just started making all these little pieces. One of which was I made a production company logo that said it just said Chris Esper Productions, and I made a little stop motion animated figure myself. It was like a little clay figure, kind of like Mr. Bill now that I think about it. But I would have my figure move onto the screen, and the letter C in my name would be missing. So he would say, "Oh, where's the C?" Talking to the camera, and then a giant C would come up from like a fishing hook or a fishing line, and just crash on my figure's head. And then that's kind of how I started all my films on YouTube. And some of the first pieces I made, one piece I made was filmed in 2008. It was like a 22-minute documentary about stand-up comedy. And then I would make all these little experimental films with just myself, because I had friends, but they never wanted to really be in my movies. I had really no interest in it. So I did everything all by myself. I acted, I shot it, I did the editing, I did everything.
Pretty much everything,
and one of my favorite examples was I did a silent film that was a lot like Charlie Chaplin's work, and I'm a huge Charlie Chaplin fan, and so I went about making this little film on my porch, and it was just me and my camera, and I would hit record on the camera, go in front of the camera, do the action, go back, hit cut, kind of direct myself in my head while trying to reframe the shot. The neighbors are passing by looking at me like I'm some alien being, and my parents are inside like thinking, what the hell is he doing out there? They have no idea what I'm doing, why I'm doing this. It was just this like, oh, there he goes again, doing something else. But then when I showed the final product to all my friends and my family, they were like, you did that? They were so impressed that I concocted this thing out of nothing. And when my mother first told me, kid, you got talent in this. Mm-hmm. That's when I thought, okay, yeah, I can do this. So then, yeah, I kind of moved forward from there until I went, and then I started studying at New England Tech. That's when I went to college.
Okay.
And where I studied film and video seriously, and it went from being just this little hobby where I was learning to becoming a serious thing. So.
And how what did you do with your first film you shot? Did you, besides showing it to your friends, did you put it on YouTube directly?
I did. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I put it up on YouTube, and I put up a whole series of films on YouTube, and all these other amateur filmmakers were starting to come forth. They put up their stuff, and I would watch it, and it was kind of like a support system. Like, they supported me, I supported them, and it kind of, in a weird way, it gave me a weird following, and I'm only like 17 years old at the time. I mean, those films are no longer online anymore, just because I've gotten much better since then, and I would think. And so I mean, it was kind of my first exposure to getting my work out into the public, and dealing with people who were genuine, and people who were following my work, and then also dealing with the negative side of it. So it taught me a lot, going into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was reading your IMDb profile, and as you know, you have 23 credits, but that doesn't mean that you shot 23 films. You probably shot 80, right? But the ones that make the cut are because you either send it to a festival or so,
or I was really rambunctious about it, and I thought, I gotta put this on IMDb, but no, it's a little bit of both, I would say. Yeah, some of the early listings are high school films or early college films that either never saw the light of day or I never showed it to anybody, but some of them went to festivals. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I was looking at the very first one, and I was wondering, it's called The Real Comics, 2008. Is that something that you got into the database, or you sent it to a festival? How did you get that film?
That was sent to a festival. I attempted to send it to Rhode Island International Film Festival, and that was the very first thing I ever made with that camera. That's the 22-minute documentary about stand-up comedy. And the idea was to get behind the scenes of what being a comic is like, the hardships, what these comics really think when they're not on the stage. And I just filmed it in one night during a competition, and filmed. I think there were 14 performances that night. And I interviewed the top 3 winners of the night right after the show was over, and kind of went from there.
So how old were you for that documentary?
I want to say I was 17. Yeah, I was 17 years old when I made that. And I submitted it to Rhode Island International, and having no idea how the festival system worked. I never heard of film festivals. I didn't know how it worked. I would constantly, month after month, just keep asking what's going on with the film, and finally, when I found out I didn't get in, it was kind of a relief, but at the same time, they said that my film was in one of the top tier judging, and I was surprised because it wasn't even that good. On a technical level, it was pretty bad because it was just everything was just me and this little rinky dink camcorder, so.
Cool. So you were saying, I was reading that your favorite actor is Robin Williams.
Yes.
He was and still is in my heart one of my favorite actors.
Yes.
And had an opportunity to go see him in Broadway maybe 6 years ago. He was doing a play where he was in a cage. He was, I think, a tiger inside a cage.
I heard about that play. Yeah.
So I had an opportunity, and you know what? I said, no, I'm gonna go to the next play, not this one, but I'm gonna go to the next play. And unfortunately, he passed away. It was such a great loss because, again, one of my favorite actors too. So
same.
So sad.
Yes.
So what do you really see that really makes him your favorite actor? What is it that is special thing that is different to you than any other actors, or how?
I think for me it's his versatility. The fact that he was able to do comedy as well as be a very, very good dramatic actor.
Absolutely.
I think probably even better than a comic actor.
I agree with you.
I
1 hour, 1 hour photo.
That I'm glad you mentioned that. That to me is his best performance, best film.
Cool.
He should have won an Oscar for that. I thought he was brilliant, and
absolutely.
the directing was brilliant. The whole film just brilliant all around.
The colors,
the shooting, just the subject matter, the way it reminded me of Taxi Driver for 2002, when it came out. Like that whole lonely man theme of it. And I think for me too, it's like there's something when you look into his eyes, and this comes from looking at actors all the time. When I see auditions, is like the first thing I always look for is the eyes, like what are their eyes trying to tell me,
right?
And as a kid, I liked him I thought, oh, he's a funny guy. Like, I didn't think anything else of it. But when I watch his stuff now, I see more, there's something honest about him.
Yeah.
When you watch him. Like, even when he plays a creepy character, like the one from 1 Hour Photo, there's something innocent about him.
Right.
That just draws me in.
Yeah.
And, he's like that funny uncle in your family.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, something I love about him is that he had this. I think that he inside of him, apparently he had so much sadness.
Mm-hmm.
But when he was performing a character, even a comedic character, but you can see, at least I can see it better when he played a dramatic role, is that he is opening that space where he was really sad.
Yes.
Where he was genuine,
Mm-hmm.
Because I think when he plays a comedic role, he's on a way trying to help other people by entertaining them.
Yeah.
But when he's playing a dramatic role, he's doing the same thing, but to me, he's more open to that dark area that he had, where he had everything, but probably he didn't have much.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
And so, for instance, another role I loved, and you probably know about this role, is the role he played in Insomnia. And there's an interview with him where he talked to a murderer, He went to see a murderer. He was interviewing him, and he was watching an interview about a killer, and he was talking about his killings, and he was, I went to McDonald's, and then, I killed 6 people, and then, I did my laundry, and then, so he explored that area of somebody who's completely out of their mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he was explaining that's what he applied in Insomnia to play that role. And I think it was a great lesson to me as an actor to, wow, you're playing somebody who is not you, but you have to be in that situation. So how can you approach playing that role? And I think it was a master lesson to me.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's a really good point. Yeah, and the role he did win an Oscar for, Good Will Hunting, where he plays a psychiatrist. Again, there's so much there that comes out of him, and it's so subtle. But it's there. Like, even same with a movie like Moscow on the Hudson, where he's playing a Russian who defects to America.
Right.
It was one of his earlier roles in the 80s, and he disappears into it. He speaks Russian for the first half hour of the movie. It's like, wow, it's incredible.
Yeah. He was I don't know, probably the best experience of all time, or one of them at least, because of the way he opened. And he had all this energy, explosive energy. And I remember Pacino talking about him when they shot Insomnia. He was saying, I'm on my trailer, I'm fine, I say hi to people, but he was on and on and on and on and on. So 2 different kind of energies. But when the camera's rolling, to me at least as an actor, you can prepare as much as you can, but you need to get to this zone where nothing really, to me, in my opinion, transmits more than the eyes, because that's a window to your soul and your body, but I think your body is a complement to your eyes, and he was a master doing that.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
Anyway, going back to your career, so I see that you have like 10 films in 2011. So were those like kind of a short student films?
Student films, yeah. They never played in any festivals. They were just like a series of experimental films where I was in college already at the time, and I thought, well, okay, let me take all that I've applied and learn. I mean, let me take all that I've learned, let me apply it into practice. So I just made these little experimental films. Like, I would just film like water, let's say, and I just would film different shots of water, like water coming from a faucet, water coming from a stream, and just show the nature of it and kind of the beauty of it. And that was really it. There was no meaning or purpose behind it. I just did it just to do it. And the same goes for all the others. When I got my first DSLR, I went out into the woods. I just filmed like all these beautiful nature shots and called it a film, but for whatever reason. But it was just fun to play with like different types of music and experiment with editing and try all these different things. So it was just more of a way of me to learn back in those days.
And so after that, do you see like a year like 2013 or 14 where you actually said, okay, now I'm doing something more more real? I'm not saying that the other ones weren't, but something like more, okay, I'm gonna make this a more professional film, I'm gonna send this to a festival. If there is any year for you where you kind of jumped in, how did you jump?
I would say 2012 was like definitely that jumping point. I was done with school, and I made my first film out of college, which was Still Life, and that was the film that really started to where I ended up now. It was the first film I seriously sent to not just one festival, but multiple festivals. It was the first film. It was the first film I ever had that was reviewed by film critics. It was the first film I ever had a screening for, where 100 people came and come to a screening, and then so it was like my first, I guess, like serious film, I guess is the right term to say.
So what was the name of that film?
Still Life.
Still Life. Okay, I think you said that. And how did you write the film yourself?
I did.
Yeah. And did you cast people?
I did.
Yeah. And did you cast some friends, or did you make like an open casting call and then you got a lot of people auditioning, or was more like
that one? It was just, I merely just cast people I've worked with in the past on film sets, because by that point I was also working on a number of film sets, doing camera work, editing. So I met all these different people, these different actors and crew people. So I kind of just hired people from the films I previously worked on, just kind of handpicked people who I had a good feeling about and who I enjoyed watching as an actor. No auditions for that one, but I mean, it was a good learning experience, meeting all these people and also making that film. So.
And how did you feel when you saw your film on a big screen with people watching the film? How was that experience?
I wanted to run away. I was so nervous. It was very gratifying, and I didn't know what to expect when the film ended. But when it did, we got a standing ovation. And so I'm standing up. I nearly have tears in my eyes. I mean, it was an emotional feeling. My family's in the audience, and they're crying with me, and so it was just like emotionally gratifying, and also it showed, I can do this, even though the film isn't perfect. I can do this, So right. So it was wonderful.
What was the film about?
The film was a personal story about a photography student who struggles with his thoughts about his creativity and his talent. So. I based it on my own experience of being a filmmaker and learning to accept feedback and criticism, because I think by that point in my career, I had never had anyone seriously like give me a critique of my work, where they sit down, they give me critical feedback, where they say, well, okay, you did good with this part, but with this part, improve on that. By that point, it was just friends and family saying, or internet commenting saying, wow, Chris, great job, and just like nothing constructive. It was just more good job. And so I didn't know the meaning of feedback. I had no idea and so when I first experienced it in college, I was kind of taken aback by it, where I was just like, well, what do I do? How do I react? And my first initial reaction was not to get angry, but to beat myself up. And so I used to beat myself up over all these different things. So that was I've always have been and still am kind of a sensitive person, and so whenever I got critiqued by a professor or by a fellow student, it was like I would feel almost kind of threatened, and I would kind of beat myself up over it. I would say, "Oh, I'm no good," and this and that. So the initial script was more cathartic. It started out more as an angry response to these feelings, but then as the script developed and changed, it formed into what it is now, where the main character had a better attitude, and the audience walked away with more of a feeling of they felt sorry for him, but at the same time they thought, "Oh, I know that feeling too. I go through that." So it was more relatable as the script evolved.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And did you after that first films, did you receive any kind of criticism from somebody?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I know I did, yeah. The first review was not good. I sent it to filmthreat.com, never having my film reviewed before. And the critic, he didn't hate it, but he certainly didn't like it either. He said it was cute, and I was just like, I don't know how I feel about that. And he mentioned some issues with sound, and he mentioned some issues with writing, mostly. So yeah, when that happened, of course I went back into my mode to beat myself up, and I thought, oh, why did I do this? I shouldn't have made this film, but then the next review came in and it was overly positive, and I'm just like, oh, okay, maybe it's not so bad. And then the next review came in, that was really good. Next one came in, that was pretty good too. And and then I got accepted into the first festival. So I thought, okay, all right, so I can handle all these hardships. If I can handle that, I can handle anything. So,
so yeah, rejection is part of success, and a lot of people talk about rejection is you have to face it sooner or later. And so how is your how's your style of making a movie when you are on the set, in terms of like, do you shoot like 30 takes, or do you like 2 takes and you move on? Or obviously depends on the scene and your actors, how they are performing. Some people, some scenes actors can't really get it out, and you need to get that. So how's your communication with your actors?
When I first started, my communication was kind of minimal, in that I would do most of my directing on the set, where like 3 or 4 takes, or maybe sometimes 5 takes at the most. I don't like to do too many takes, just because I feel like it often wears out the actor, it wears out the crew. It's unnecessary, right. unless it's truly needed. But I never understood why people like Stanley Kubrick would do like 75, 88 takes. I respect that. That's awesome if it's needed, but I just never really found it necessary. So I try to keep my takes minimal. But nowadays, communicating with actors for me is key. What I like to do nowadays, and I did this with my most recent film, Please Punish Me, I like to have the actors, I like to do all my directing in the rehearsal, where I have the actors rehearse, and I give them my notes there, and then they go through the scene. And it depends on what the scene is. Sometimes, if the characters in the script aren't supposed to know each other, I try to make sure that the actors don't even see each other, because I want that spontaneity to come on the set.
Right.
But if it's a scene where they have to know each other, then I usually bring the actors in, we rehearse a couple weeks in advance, and then on the set, I leave them alone. Unless they really need my direction, where they're going too big or they're going too low. I try to get them into that middle ground, but I do most of my directing in rehearsal, just because on the set, I should just be focused on what's going on around me and not just on them. So on the set, I kind of have to divert my attention too, as every director should. You're worrying about, you're supposed to be worried about what kind of shot do you want. You're thinking about the production design. You're thinking about the schedule and all these other things. You can't really focus on the actors and your story, even though you have to. That has to be number one, I think. So I try to do all my directing prior, and then on the set, I only talk to them if I feel the need to. Otherwise, they always get it. And I've been very blessed with the actors I've worked with.
Is that something that you learn when you were learning acting, or is that something that you learned from watching an interview with the director you admire, and like Scorsese, or how did you get to that style of shooting with your actors?
Yeah, I think I would say it was a combination of both, where like I I learned by doing, but I also learned by watching my idols and my masters and listening to how they approached acting. You know, I tried to find out what good acting was versus bad acting, and you know, and sometimes, and even today, I still don't know what good acting is, because that's all a matter of opinion to somebody else, and so there are times even now I'm still learning what in the world I'm supposed to say, because talking to an actor is like, every actor is different, so it's often you kind of have to find what is their comfort zone, you know, like how do you talk to them, like, because every actor you have to talk to them kind of a certain way. Some actors need more direction than others, so it's about finding out who they are as a person and how do they identify with the character themselves, and what are they like just talking to me. Every actor is different, so I try to see who that specific actor is as a person, and what are their interests and what are their likes. Because I mean, if I feel that if I give them my complete attention and I get to know them as a person before I get to know their character, then that's good for me, because then the communication becomes pretty solid.
Right. Cool. And I wanted to ask you something else about that. I just forget, just flew out of my mind. But I had a question about. Oh, I know what I was going to ask you. So have you ever worked on your own movies as an actor, or not really? That's something you don't like to do.
The extent I've gone to was just appearing in a cameo where I just walk by on the street, and like that one of my early student films, I had to appear just as a guy who gets killed by a mobster, and I had lines like, "Oh no, please," and that was really about it. I don't like to act in my own films because one, I don't consider myself an actor in any way, shape, or form, and two, I think that too diverts my attention, and that I'm worried about my own performance versus what's the story. So I try to stay away from that.
And another question I wanted to ask you is like, you obviously enjoyed storytelling.
Yes.
And what was it for you that you decided to become a filmmaker and not a writer and just write novels? Or what was different for you, or the appealing of making a movie instead of just the page?
Right. Well, I found that with being a director, I found I could kind of do both, and I could write my own scripts and then direct them. But more importantly, I think because I'm a very visual person, and filmmaking is a purely visual medium, so I see things mostly in pictures, and I learn by doing, and I'm a hands-on learner. Yeah. Like even in school, I was never really a book person. I learned more by doing things hands-on versus being in the classroom, let's say. So I think that's kind of what led me to filmmaking, was just my visual sensibilities.
Cool. And so let's move on to your next movies after 2012. I have a few here. I have Sound, Beacons, Take My Keys, and Always a Reason.
Yeah.
So let's talk about those before we go to the next one.
Sure. Well, the thing about Beacons was a music video that I did. And the reason I listed that was because there was dialogue and there was other stuff going on, so it was more of a short film for me. And that's kind of what I like to do with music videos oftentimes. It depends on the song, but with that one, it was by an artist that was originally from Rhode Island. Now she's based in New York, named Muse and Lestrella, and she wrote this really nice song about the heroes of tomorrow. Who are doing great things, and so in the video, we had 3 different stories going on. We had a story of a cop who was trying to be a good cop, but trying to do his job. But when he tries to give a woman a ticket, she calls him out and she calls him names, and so it kind of beats him down. And then we had an artist who was trying to make ends meet by paying the bills, and she couldn't. Then we had a man who was discriminated because of his orientation. And so we had these 3 different stories going on, and but each person was a hero in some way because they stood up for themselves, or they did something admirable, or another person came their way and helped them succeed, and then they were the heroes. So it's just all about heroism, and not the typical. When people think of heroism, I think most think of like superheroes, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. But I think the real heroes in our lives are the everyman that we see every day in our lives. So that's kind of what I wanted to portray in the video, and it turned out to be a lot of fun.
Did you change your style a little bit just because you were shooting a music video? Many music videos are like really like 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds. Or did you make it more like a movie where you may have a longer take of 8 seconds or 20 seconds?
During the actual bits where we hear the song, there was a lot of fast cutting and fast editing, and it was more stylistic. When it came to the dialogue scenes, it was a little more cinematic in that we slowed down some of the editing and we let the scene breathe a little bit and we let the dialogue breathe. So.
What do you use for editing? Do you use like Premiere or Vegas or Premiere? Okay.
Premiere, yeah. I started out using Final Cut Pro.
Right.
I've used Windows Movie Maker. I haven't used Sony Vegas personally, but my last film was edited on Sony Vegas. But I primarily use Premiere. I find it the most user friendly. I find it the most professional of anything I've used. So.
Yeah, I love it. I started with Final Cut Pro, then I moved to Premiere, and I recently moved to Final Cut Pro X because I don't really want to get into the subscription model just yet. So for now, I'm using Final Cut Pro X and roll with that for a little bit. And but I love Premiere CS6.
Yes,
and so it's a great software.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, cool. So what's after that music video? We have "Take My Keys," Always a Reason.
Yeah, "Take My Keys." I didn't actually direct. I
camera. Okay.
Well, I did camera work on it, but that was directed by Nick Petty, and produced by Colin Fournier, who is a dear friend of mine, and she was also in Still Life, and she just asked me to come on board. She liked my work and liked me, so then she asked me to just come on board and operate one of the 3 cameras going around, and that was a really, really good video. It was basically about the effects of drug driving for teens, and it's played in numerous festivals, it's played at schools, it's won a couple of awards, so it was really an excellent video.
Cool.
And it's still making its rounds, so yeah, I mean, it's quite good.
Was it one day shooting?
It was 1 day for me. I think the overall shoot was maybe 2 or 3 days. I wasn't there for the other 2. I was only there for 1 day. But it was fun. We were shooting in a hospital at one point, and then we shot in a school auditorium. This really big school auditorium. We had a camera crane, and we had all this
toys.
Yeah, all these toys. Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, it was a fun video to do.
That's pretty cool. And I was going to ask. Do you have currently? Do you have any preference in terms of camera? I know it's not the camera; it's the filmmaker behind the camera. But do you find yourself shooting with a certain camera that you like more than others? Like let's say, for instance, for me, shooting with the Canon, I like the skin tones on a Canon, right? But I don't like the skin tones on a Nikon. So, when I'm shooting portrait work, I'm using my 5D Mark III, and when I'm doing a landscape, I'm shooting with my Nikon.
Yes.
So do you have kind of a preference? Do you shoot film specifically? And do you use DSLRs, or do you prefer like an Alexa or a Red, or not really? What's your take on that?
I wish I could afford an Alexa or a Red, first of all. I've been on sets where I've been near one. I helped out on shoots where I had to be part of the camera team, so I kind of been able to use a Red, which was kind of cool. But for my own work, because I work on such a small scale, and my scale is getting a little bigger, but back then, like, my scale was so small, I was using a Canon T2i, and I like Canons for the very same reason you just pointed out. But the unique thing is, I actually don't use Canon lenses I use Nikon lenses. So I just like specifically the ones from the Nicors from the 1970s. And my reason for them is because it gives an interesting, creamy, cinematic look that I really appeal to that. So I tend to use that. I recently switched over to the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera.
Oh, okay.
So now that's what I currently use for most of my films and my video work. So, and the reason I like that so much is because it gives you this really nice flat image, that you could leave it as is, and it gives you a really cool 16 millimeter kind of look, and it even gives you the ability to play with the colors, give it a lot of contrast, make the colors pop, more so than you could do with a DSLR, because it's already well graded, that if you push it any further, you're just going to get a lot of grain. So, and I love to color grade a lot, so that's primarily why I use the Blackmagic. So.
Okay, so in the Bedroom TV series, what was that?
That was a web show that was created by Seth Chitwood, who's created a whole slew of web shows: Family Problems, World's Worst Director, Red Circles, just all these shows. Played in numerous festivals, so he's a pretty successful guy. In the Bedroom was an attempt to make a web show that was a collaborative effort where it wasn't just merely just Seth behind the camera doing everything himself, because really that's how he does it. He does everything all by himself. And so he wanted to have, and he put it best. He mentioned how, you would go to all these networking events and meet all these people, all these actors and directors and all these writers and people like that. And you always say the same thing to them. I want to work with you sometime on this, or I want to work with you on this, I want to work with you on that. But then it hardly ever happens, because it's just more, life happens, people get busy. Right. But so Seth thought, okay, well, what if there was a platform where all these people could come together and actually work together? And so In the Bedroom was unique in that, each episode would be the same format: 2 characters, 1 bedroom, different stories for each one. And each episode had a different writer, each episode had a different director. So I came on board as one of the co-producers of the show initially, but really I wanted to direct. That's what I love to do the most. So I directed 2 episodes, and I wrote one of them that I had directed. One of which was written by Audrey Noon. It was called Out the Window. And that one was a comedy about a guy who's in a closet, and woman goes in her bedroom just to clean things up, and then she discovers this man in her closet, this young kid in her closet, and she goes, well, how in the world did you get in here? Came in through the window. And so it kind of develops into this relationship, where this young man is falling in love with this older woman in these couple of seconds of just meeting each other. So it's like a funny kind of love story. Like, the actress that played the older woman, Ellen Levinson, she compared it very well to Harold and Maude, which I never actually saw when we were making it, but I watched it in preparation for that. And yeah, it's very much like Harold and Maude in that way. So that was one of the episodes. The other one was called Happy Endings, which I wrote, and I also directed it, and that was with Topher Hansen and Kaylee Khaleesi. And that episode was about a writer who is proposing to his girlfriend, but then things start to unravel a little bit as to what's real and what's fiction. And like his own work starts to blur the line between reality and fantasy, and I'm always interested in films that do that, so I really wanted to experiment with that, and that turned out to be a fun episode to do. And In the Bedroom itself, it played at the LA Web Fest and won a couple of awards, including for writing. And then at the end of the year, last year, Seth held the Angelwood Awards, where the award ceremony honors those who worked with Angelwood Pictures, who produced In the Bedroom. And so I was nominated for Best Director for the show, along with a few other folks from the series. I ended up winning the award, so it was that's cool. So it was a very nice surprise cool. to be honored in that way. Yeah. So that was a web show that was a lot of fun to do.
Cool. And so you mentioned that your biggest passion is directing. So I have two questions about that. So one, why you feel that that's your biggest passion? What's the feeling that makes you make it your biggest passion? And my second part is like, how do you feel about editing, and how much you like editing, how much you don't like editing, and what if directing is your biggest passion, editing is like number 10 or number 2 or number 3? So.
The reason I love directing so much is because it's not even just a sense of control. It's more just being that person that's directing the story in a certain direction and creating this world from nothing. And and it goes much deeper than that. I think all of us inside of us. I think all of us, even if you're not a filmmaker, I think we're all directors in some way. Like, we all want to be in a movie, and we all think of our lives as movies in some way. Mm-hmm. In that everything we see is a camera shot, everything we hear is a soundtrack, and all the people that we know around us, there are supporting characters in our story that we call life. True. And so I think I love that idea of, okay, I'm not just telling a story. I'm directing a life of this character, mm-hmm. and this person's life is a story among all these other people who were in part of his or her world. So I think that's why I love directing so much, is that idea of, I don't want to say playing God, but kind of like you're sort of you're controlling what happens in one's life, in the character's life, and you're on the journey to find out what happens next. You know, does this character go this way? Does he go that way? Or, or something like that. I would say, and then as far as editing goes, mm-hmm. I love editing. I do. I don't like to edit my own films, at least not anymore, mm-hmm. Because I feel I'm not objective enough to edit my own films. Because let's say it takes me a good 2 hours to get that nice crane shot I wanted to get. I'm gonna put all my time and effort into making sure that crane shot gets in there, even when it's not needed. Right. Whereas I have an editor like Phil. Mm-hmm. Like, Phil edited my last film, and Phil was really good, really, really good at saying, Chris, you don't need this, you don't need that. And so he was good at keeping me grounded and saying, if you keep this, your running time is going to be this long, or if you keep this is going to take away from this other element of it. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like I need that extra pair of eyes in order to tell me what's needed and what's not. The same goes with shooting my own films. I can't shoot my own films either. Oh. I love to shoot. I love to light. I love cinematography. I love coming up with lighting schemes and colors. Like, that's fun. Mm-hmm. But I can't do it for my own work, because I used to be able to, but not anymore. As I've grown as a director, I think that my sensibilities have grown as well. And so I think when another cinematographer telling me, well, if we use this lens for this is the effect we're going to get. And also too, just having another person give you that immediate feedback, whereas you're kind of guessing in your head, mm-hmm. what if you're right or not, and I hate second guessing myself if something's right or wrong. Mm-hmm. So I like to have that person, kind of confer with me. Tell me no. I think this is the right direction, and also too, and more importantly, it's again going back to focus. If I'm diverting my attention between shooting and editing and also directing the actors, mm-hmm. Then something's gonna lack in one of those areas. So I like to keep my focus where everything is on point, everything is on par the way it should be, but nothing's getting lost in translation. Mm-hmm.
So do you enjoy editing somebody else's movie, or not really, or it depends?
It depends on the movie. I think with any film I work on that's not my own, I have to love the script. It's the same with when I'm directing my own film. Like, with me, the script has to be, it's all like falling in love with a woman for me. Like, I have to feel like I am in love with it. I can't just like it. I have to be in love with it to my core. Mm-hmm. When I'm directing a film. When it comes to someone else's work, I can like it enough where I can say, yes, I see potential in this. I love to do it. Mm-hmm. In that case, yeah, I do like to edit other people's work, but most of the time I like to do just my own thing. Yeah. And I don't mind working for other people. I don't mind doing favors for them, but after a while, like, I want to be known for just my directing. Because if I become known as an editor, then that's all I'm gonna get, and I really don't want to be known as an editor. So
definitely. So let's move to the next. I think we have 3 left, and then I would mm-hmm. like to talk about your book. Okay. So the next project you were involved with is called Bending Brothers.
Bending Brothers. Yeah.
So what was that about?
That was a web show by Robert Lopez. And it's a sci-fi fantasy about these 3 brothers. They lost their father, and so they go on this journey of finding it's very hard to explain, because it's a show with so many layers to it, and Rob has this vision for it, just this huge world that, like, when you ask him one question about it, he'll go into a good 20-minute conversation with you about what that world means. What does this mean? What does that mean? So it's kind of a story about these 3 brothers. They have to find these keys to unlock a he's gonna kill me for this. I really don't know how to explain it, but I directed 2 episodes of that, and the cast is great. Curtis Reed and J.J. Wong, just all these great people. So it was different for me because I love science fiction and fantasy. So it was a fun experiment to try out a different style.
So you did have fun with that, shooting that?
I did, yeah.
Cool. So then we have a steak knives.
Yeah.
So what was that about?
That was just a really fun comedy to do. I mean, it came about because Audrey New wanted to work with me on a project. And she's a writer and filmmaker in her own right, a very talented one too. And so she contacted me and let me know that John Fiore, who's a writer out of Boston, had written this short comedy called Steak Knives, and the script was just basically about a woman who's celebrating her birthday with friends, and so when the friends leave, she starts attacking her husband, and she's doing that because for her birthday gift, he gave her steak knives, and so she's very upset about it. She's ranting at him, and so Audrey. So it was just a really fun, very broad comedy, and so, I barely even directed the actors. I just told them to have fun because it's a script that didn't call for any kind of substance or subtlety. It was just a very fun comedy, and so Audrey just played it so over the top. It was hysterical. And David Affleck was the husband, and he was great as well. And film played at, I want to say, 9 film festivals, or 8 or 9 film festivals. Did pretty well. Even won 2 awards. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
nice. Let's talk about Please Punish Me.
Yes.
So what was that about?
That's a comedy by Tom Paolino and Rich Camp, and the story is about a businessman who is overly blessed in life, so he seeks to be punished for his curse of being blessed. And so far it's played at 13 film festivals. It's my most successful film thus far in terms of festivals.
And how many festivals you had?
13.
13. Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and so David Affleck is in it, Joanna Donofrio, Laurie Bacon, Mark Carter, Bradley Rhodes, Tally Clemens, just a great cast. And it was fun. It was so much fun to shoot. And that was really the first time I used that style of directing that I talked about earlier, where I had the actors come to me, rehearse. We would rehearse the lines, and I would get so involved with them. I remember asking Laurie, for example, to give me a biography of her character, Do Re Mi, and her character only appears on screen for maybe 2 minutes, but she gave such a great backstory as to how she came into the world of being a dominatrix, and so none of that appears on screen in the film, but it helped her performance. And
absolutely.
And it totally just like enriched it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You can definitely see it. To me, when somebody does that kind of research, you can see how truthful the performance becomes just because you did so much research on it. That's great. She's probably a great actress.
Oh, she is. No, she's one of my favorite people to work with. And then David as well. Like, I remember describing to him the character of Scotty being somewhat like kind of a spoiled guy. Like we went through all these different layers, and you're like, all right, who is Scotty? What's his personality like? How did he grow up? And we decided that he had everything handed to him in life, and when stuff finally goes right for him, he finally figures that he doesn't deserve this, and he realizes, oh, maybe he is spoiled, and so like all these good things come to him. He gets a promotion from work, and he decides, I do nothing at this job. I'm getting promoted over people who are actually working hard, and so it's not the path that he wants in life. He wants to do something else entirely, and so we really. David brought so much to it that it felt real on screen, and that's one of the things people like about that film is how real David is. And it was also fun to play with because, like in the place where he goes to get his punishment, we called it in the script, it's called the Punish Me Palace, and so we used all these crazy colors, lots of reds and oranges, and because I really wanted to create a world that was just out of this world, where Scotty walks into this different kind of reality where he's not sure why he's here, why he's doing this, but he feels like he has to do this, and all these people around him are they're crazy, and he's the only grounded character in the entire film. Then in his office, it's a very bleak looking office, a lot of white walls and gray colors and earth tones. And the character and his boss is a very broad guy where all he knows about is money and only money, and that's his focus is money. And all his colleagues and bosses around him, they're also like cigar chomping, money hungry people, and so it was fun to explore that side of comedy while also being a drama. Because when I go into a comedy, especially that film, I didn't look at it as a comedy. I saw it as a drama, and this whole idea that everyone in life is quite literally punished by the system, and we're told that we have to be a certain kind of person, we have to live a certain life, and so Scotty doesn't want to conform to that. He wants to be this other person.
So how did you get involved? You're saying that this is probably so far your biggest and better movie, right? How did you get involved? How did somebody cast you as a director? Is that something that you produced yourself? How did you get involved in that project?
I met Tom Paolino, who wrote this story treatment in 2013, I want to say, and he had this story. It was only 7 pages at the time, and he had the story just laying on a hard drive for about 10 years, and he wrote it when he was in LA, and so then he told me about the story. I wanted to work with him because I heard great things about him, and so he sent me the script, and I liked it, but what made me fall in love with it was the ending that he had written, and I thought that's the story right there. Everything else before that, that's all good, but that's the heart of the story right there. So then I asked him if I could make this, and he said yes. And I went about and I took the story to Rich Camp, who's a good friend of mine, and he was the first person that I ever worked on anything of. He was making his first feature in 2010, and I was his intern. And then what started as an internship quickly blossomed into a friendship, and now he's my best friend. He's getting married in a couple weeks, and I'm going to be filming it. So, so long story short, but so Rich, very funny guy. He took the script, he elevated the comedy, and he also elevated the story a little bit more, where he added a little bit more depth, and he brought a little bit of himself into it. And so the story got a little bit longer, and the story got further developed. And so I kind of took the reins of it from there, where I found a producer to help me co-produce it with me, and I directed it.
And so where can we watch that film? Is that on YouTube or?
As of right now, no, because it's still making its festival rounds. But,
okay.
But the 13th festival it just got into. It's going to be online in July, because it's a contest where there's a prize of $10,000, I believe. And so from July to August, the film will be online on that specific website, the Fanboy Film Festival. And so there, the audience can vote for it and watch it. So that'll be the first time it'll ever be online in, I want to say in about 2 years that it's been making its way on the festival circuit.
So to make the film, I mean, the script was for 10 years on a hard drive, but to make it, was it in a couple of weekends or?
A couple of weekends, yeah. It was 5 days. It was 5 days in the course of 1 month, a series of weekends, with an additional reshoot the next year, because I went away to LA for a couple months for an internship, and so during that time, the post-production process was kind of slowing down a little bit. We had to do some ADR, and so that made it a little difficult as well. Some of the ADR we couldn't even use, so it was just it was a long post-production process, but it was worth it.
Yeah, we're still shooting a movie called Plaga Zombie American Invasion, and so that's the 4th movie. There is another trilogy that is on YouTube, and the second one has 2.6 million views.
Yes.
We've been shooting this movie for 3 years now.
Wow.
And it's so it's still in post-production, and we're actually going to shoot the very, very, very last scene today. It was a big scene with, 30 or so zombies.
Oh, wow.
But because of the weather, they had to cancel, so there's only one more day of shooting, and then they're gonna start heavy on post production. We hope to have it finished by the end of the year, and so I really look forward to it.
That's awesome.
So yeah, my character was done last year. We stopped shooting last year with my character, but
nice.
That's
so
pretty cool.
So you directed in addition to acting in it?
No, this one I was just one of the lead roles. We're three guys. We're three zombie killers, and so I was one of them. And so I'm not directing, although I did compose a lot of the characters. I changed the last name of that character. I made a puppet, and many things. I really got into building the character. It was so much fun. Wow, we look forward to it. It's just we can't wait for that movie to be out.
That's awesome.
So yeah, that's a feature film.
Excellent.
Yeah, so we have some audience because the other three movies they already have some sort of an audience.
Aliens turning people into zombies. That's like the movie Plane 9 from Outer Space, right?
Someone once told me,
A coward will stay down, but a hero will rise as many times as it takes and never give up.
it's not how many times you get knocked down, but how many times you get back up.
Está la verdad.
Zombies me dan asco.
So very, very important question, Chris. And are you more like a beer kind of guy or a wine kind of guy?
Wine.
Wine? Oh, really? Well,
Easily.
yeah. Red wine or white wine?
Red wine.
Red wine.
I'm
Oh,
Italian, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have some Italian blood myself, so that's pretty cool. So, do you want some now?
Sure.
or-
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't mind. Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you a little bit because you need to drive at one point, right?
Yeah.
Let me give you just a taste to see if
Okay.
you like it. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. That's good. That's plenty.
Good.
Thank you.
Cheers.
That's delicious. Cheers.
You like it?
Yeah.
Good wine.
That's awesome.
Cool. Okay, so I want to talk about your present and your future. What's going on? What's coming for you? Are you shooting something now, or
I am, yeah. My most recent film is a thriller called A Very Proper Man. That one stars Michael Thurber and Christian Masters. We had a recast recently. And that film is about a man who is very prim and proper. So then he goes... So Michael Thurber plays a guy named Edgar who's very prim and proper. And so he wants... His goal was to clean up society one slob at a time. So it's kind of a satirical thriller. Kind of a cool social commentary on how society carries himself today. Mm-hmm. And the script was written by Chris Halleck out of Boston. It's a really good script. And when I first read it, I was just so entranced by it that I had to do it. And it's cool because I'm kind of going for a film noir kind of style. And that's the first time I've really ever done a film noir, at least since college. So it's really, really, really cool script and great cast. So right now we're at the tail end of production. We're going to do some reshooting, and I'm hoping to release that by the fall. So that's the most recent film. And recently my company, Stories in Motion, we optioned the rights to a couple of screenplays for this year and for next year. One being which called The Deja Vuers by Jason Allen. He's out of Tennessee. And that's a really cool script. It's a fantasy about a about a couple of folks who all have deja vu, and somehow they know each other from a past life, or they've seen each other in a dream, so they're all trying to unravel why they're experiencing this deja vu. And it's only about one location, 8 pages, and that's gonna be done in August, hopefully. And I recently ran a script called Undatement Line, and that one is about dating and about a guy who he is dating again for the first time in a long time. And so what he doesn't realize, though, is that nowadays today he needs to have a resume, a cover letter, and all these prerequisites in order to go on a date. And I based on my own personal experience, because a couple months ago, I started dating again for the first time since high school, because that really wasn't my focus. My focus was always more on my career. So finding a woman in my life wasn't really the number one thing. But recently I decided to give it a try. So I went out my first day with this one girl. She was beautiful. She was fun to talk to. But at the same time, it was like a job interview. It didn't feel like a date. It felt like I felt like I was being questioned or interrogated about something, because she would ask me questions like, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" And I'm like, I had no idea what to say. And so the next day, kind of the same thing. I tried to message a girl on the website, on the dating site I was on. She would message back with like a rejection letter, as though you applied for a job and you didn't get the interview. It was very, very, very strange how this all worked. So I thought, well, man, what if this happened in real life, that that there was this center hub where you go on dates and you have to have a resume and all these prerequisites in order to get in. It just seemed like an intriguing, kind of fun idea, so I decided to write it, and I'm co-producing that and directing it, along with Stories by the River out of Quincy, Massachusetts. And then for 2017, I optioned the rights for 2 scripts by Brian Pickard, one being which called Pride and Money, which is a gritty fight film, and the other is Smartphone, about a phone that falls in love with its owner. So a lot of exciting stories and stuff happening for my company and myself. So yeah, a lot of great things.
Cool. That's awesome. So now I would like to talk about your book. Okay, because this is pretty cool. So
Thank you.
It's called The Filmmaker's Journey.
Yes.
And so you did publish it a couple a couple months ago, or just came out?
It's not out yet. No.
Okay.
It comes out June 24th.
Okay.
So right now I'm in the final stages of doing some last minute editing, and I've been sending it out to a couple of critics and sending it out for reviews, and the feedback so far has been pretty positive overall. And the book is based on a vlog of the same name. I do a vlog on my YouTube page, also called The Filmmaker's Journey, and the goal of it is to give advice to up-and-coming filmmakers, or those who are thinking about getting into filmmaking but have no idea where to go first. So, I'm only 26 years old, but I think at age 26, I think I've done more than most have, and so I have I feel like I have a lot of experience from going to LA to experiencing all the hardships and rejections and feelings of failure. And I thought, and there was a point in my life where I was almost angry that I got into it, because I thought, oh, why didn't anybody tell me about this? Why didn't anyone tell me it was like this? It was not supposed to be like this. So then I thought, well, okay, what if I take all that negative energy, let me put that into a vlog where I could advise these up and coming filmmakers, or those who are a veteran even, and give them a reminder that, hey, there are things about this industry nobody tells you about. Here's what I've experienced. There's more out there that I don't know about, but this is what I know, being an up-and-coming director. Let me tell you what it's like. Let me tell you what I've experienced, all the mistakes I've made, and how you could avoid those mistakes. And so I started out as the video blog, and it was going really well, and still is. I don't have like a ton of views, but the vlogs are short. They're only like 5 minutes or less. And so I thought, okay, and there's so much more I really want to say, but I can't in over 5 minutes, because that gets boring after a while, especially for the internet. So I thought, okay, what's a way I could explore these larger ideas and give more of my advice in a larger form? And the easy answer was doing it as a book. So I basically took all the same advice that I did in my video blog, and I expand upon it in the book, along with new new pieces of advice and ideas and things that I've learned, and I also give resources as to where filmmakers could get their films reviewed, where they could submit to festivals, resources for technical stuff, such as camera stuff and editing. But the main thing about the book is giving life lessons about what I've experienced, such as what does it mean to be a director, at least in my eyes, and also what does it mean for a filmmaker to get distribution. Like how do you find the right people to work with, things like that. And so that's kind of pretty much everything I cover in the book.
Mm-hmm.
So, and pretty much any bad experiences I had, and I say this is what happened, this is how to avoid that. So it's all about the realities of what filmmaking is about and how to avoid all that.
Mm-hmm. I have 3 questions for you.
Sure,
Actually,
yeah.
just came out.
Yeah, that's fine.
You mentioned that you have some experience going to LA.
Yes.
I moved to LA in 2008,
Mm-hmm.
and then the market crashed, and then my wife and I moved back just because we didn't know what was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So we were there for a very short time, and that was 2008. So how was your experience? Did you go there for a year, a couple of years, a couple of months?
I was there for 3 months,
Yeah.
and I got it through an internship I did. I got the internship so I could be in LA, but I got the job of internship through the Moving Picture Institute, which is also known as MPI, and MPI is all about giving freedom to filmmaking. It's about exploring freedom through filmmaking, so liberty and freedom, and so. Great nonprofit organization. They helped out many filmmakers over in the past. My relationship with them started because my good friend Rich, who wrote Please Punish Me, wrote this web show called A Guy Going Crazy, which I also directed. I directed a full season of that show. Did very well, played in LA. And so MPI knew Rich because he did an internship with them, so that's how I found out about it. But they also helped in funding the show for us. So they helped us out in that way. And so I kept up with MPI and what they're doing and the kind of things that they were working on. So then I applied for the internship, got the job, and I ended up finding A La Entertainment. And A La Entertainment, they were responsible for the movies Drive, way back, Mordecai with Johnny Depp, Draft Day, I believe it was called, and just so many other great movies. And so my main job at A La was doing script coverage. And for those that don't know, script coverage is a way of when you read a screenplay and you determine if the screenplay is good enough to either consider, recommend, or just pass on it totally. And so it was a good way to experience what studios look for in a screenplay. So it's a good learning experience, and reading all these different scripts that would be submitted through all these agencies.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And you look to see what are the good qualities of it, what are the bad qualities. And so my job would be to write a critique from beginning. Well, first I would have to write a synopsis as to what happens at the beginning of the story, how does it end, and then I would give my thoughts and critique on it, and I would determine if I would consider the writer, or pass on them, or like, for example, maybe the studio likes the writer, and maybe they want to work with them on something else. So you say, okay, the writer, I would recommend the writer. The script, though, I would pass on the script.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my main job, and I also had to do some of the more smaller tasks, such as answering phones, making coffee in the morning, taking lunch orders, and
Right.
It was the kind of tasks that many will look down upon. But in my opinion, if you can stand out and do those jobs successfully, that will help you really be remembered. I always tried to make sure that I was there. I didn't have to report into work till 9 a.m. in the morning. I would always come in at 8, and because I really wanted to stand out, and and to this day I still keep in touch with them from time to time. And when I was in LA, I met so many just amazing people. I did a lot of great work out there I got to meet one of my favorite directors, which was a great experience for me. Kenneth Johnson.
Huh?
Cool. He wrote and produced a $6 Million Man television series, The Bionic Woman. He directed that. He directed and produced The Incredible Hulk with Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno. V, the miniseries, Short Circuit 2, Alienations,
Wow.
and Steel, just like all these variety of shows and movies. And so I had written him once before, and I said, I asked him all these questions about his work, like more as like a fanboy type of thing. But then, as a filmmaker, I then reached out to him and I said, Mr. Johnson, I'm in LA now. Is there any way that we can meet in person? I'd like to pick your brain a little bit. And he said, yeah, come to my office. And so here I am in his office. All these posters from all the shows and movies surrounding me, memorabilia. I was like a kid in a candy store. I was amazed, and so
that's cool.
We spoke for about an hour, and he's so full of knowledge, and he had so many great behind the scenes stories, but he also gave me some great advice about filmmaking, and so some of that I share in the book as well. And then he saw Still Life, he loved it, and so that was even more gratifying. And then he proceeded to invite me to his directing class for free as his guest.
Cool.
So it was really cool, and he showed clips of his work, and how the scene was shot, and what he attempted to do. So that was also a good learning experience as well. So a lot of good memories of being in LA.
Nice. That's cool. That's super awesome, actually. So another question I wanted to ask you about festivals nowadays. What's your take in terms of like getting in festivals? Because for example, I sent I only shot one film as a filmmaker. I sent my film to 30 film festivals. I didn't get into any. So that was 2001. We're in 2016 today. So what's your take? Kind of, so I have the feeling that my film isn't great, but I still feel that so many festivals, they get so many submissions and they just don't even watch them.
Well, first of all, getting into any festival it's like getting into an Ivy League college. It's like, it's like, and we're living in an age now where we have media oversaturation,
right?
Because everyone who has a DSLR camera call themselves a filmmaker,
right?
Even though they either never made anything or they made something and it's not good,
right? And
so what's the first thing they do? They send out to a festival. Right. So we're surrounded by so much media from YouTube and Vimeo and all these different websites, and not only that, but now there's also so many festivals in every state of the country and all over the world, whereas 20, 30 years ago, there was a limited number of film festivals.
Right.
And to be listed on IMDb, let's say, you would have to be accepted into a festival or entered a festival, number one. And two, being accepted meant a lot back then. Nowadays, being accepted, not that it's easier, but there's more options to choose from where you can get accepted a little easier than you could 20, 30 years ago.
Right.
And like I said, with so many people making movies, the competition is so much stronger that you have to break through that herd of other filmmakers who are also doing it. So I think the best way to be accepted, not only make a good film. I mean, that's totally subjective though, because even good films get rejected,
right?
Sadly. But I think the biggest thing with being accepted is always have a plan of attack before you're going into it. I did this too, and I know filmmakers that have done this, where they blindly submit to all these festivals, 20, 30, 40, 50, and they have no idea if that film is even right for their project.
Right.
But without doing any kind of necessary research or finding out, okay, what kind of festival is this film? What kind of festival would accept my film? Or, what kind of festivals, what kind of films does this festival accept, etc. For example, I once sent Still Life to a film festival without reading anything about it, and it turned out that it was a film festival for fantasy films, and I got rejected.
Right.
Had I read the rules, I don't think I even would have submitted to begin with.
Right.
It didn't cost me any money, thank God. It was a free festival, but even so, like, why waste that time of filling out the submission form and doing all that work?
And some of them
just
have to pay.
Without paying attention, and so that's one of the things I touch on in the book is if you want to get into a festival. It's much more than just having a quality film. It's also reaching out to the festival and in some cases even asking them, where you say, here's my trailer. Is this the kind of thing that you accept? Is this the kind of thing that you look for? And they'll say yes or no. Sometimes, let me tell you the truth, maybe they'll say yes because they want your money, but that's a totally different subject. But, but it's also about watching the past films or past trailers that the festival has accepted and seeing how similar is it to your film in some way. So, but even when your film is really good and it's solid, you have good sound, you have good lighting, etc., that could get rejected too, simply because of various factors. One being running time.
Right.
If your film is over 10 minutes long, you're starting to risk a little bit.
Right.
If your film has opening credits that are over a minute long, that's another huge factor, because especially if it's a short film, like why with a short film you want to get into it right away. You know, it's not a feature film. You don't have to put all these credits, and I made that mistake so many times in the past.
Yeah.
But you learn from that. Another thing too is also that the festival could accept another film over yours because they know another filmmaker better. They live closer. I've heard stories like that where a filmmaker lived closer, so they accepted. So they accepted that filmmaker.
Right.
When both films have dealt with the same subject matter.
Right.
So they favored the filmmaker that lived a little closer, so they could attend.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about what niche is your film.
Right.
What category? I mean, if your film is a comedy and also a drama, or it combines genres, that could be a little difficult to categorize.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so many factors that go into it that we could sit here and talk about all day, because there's just so much to it.
Too much to it. So kind of talking about kind of the same area of filmmaking. So what do you think about, our generation, you're 20 something, I'm 30 something, is different today than when it was 50 years ago or 70 years ago. When those filmmakers, they did have gatekeepers, and you have to go through them, you have to get the studios to really take your project. So nowadays, in a way, the gatekeepers are gone. However, do you think that there is do you think there is any value on still knocking on those doors of the gatekeepers of the big studios? Or do you think that, just doing your own thing, posting it online, building an audience, that has more value than going to the gatekeepers? Because, on a way, nowadays, to me at least, there is the currency of views, that sometimes the views you get are, on a way, they have more value than the quality of the content that you make. So I know we all want to produce quality, but what's your take on, doing your own thing? Do we need to be in LA? Not really. Well, I know anybody can shoot a movie today, but how realistic is that approach of doing your own thing in your local market, building your own audience? What's your take on that?
That's a really tough one, and I touch a lot about this in the book, because it's something I fought with myself as well. Like now I'm considering moving to LA. Mm-hmm. Because ultimately that's where the business is. Mm-hmm. That's where you go to make the deals. That's where the studios are. Mm-hmm. That's where everybody's making movies. Mm-hmm. And certainly you could live across the country, still make movies, and do business in LA and go back and forth and be bi-coastal. That's totally fine too. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, I think the business is in LA. Mm-hmm. It's always been in LA. It's always been Hollywood. I don't think it's ever going to leave that. Mm-hmm. But then again, certainly, yes, you can make movies in a smaller market. Find some success on the internet. Will you be the next Darren Aronofsky? No, probably not. But I mean, you could work your way to that. I think doing it that route takes a little bit longer, and it certainly takes a while knocking on the studio doors too, the traditional way, because they want you to start at the bottom and then work your way up, and then you'll be doing that for 10, 20 years before you can finally make that jump ship to finally direct a movie. So I would say, if you're going to start out in filmmaking, yes, certainly start right away. Even if you have simply just an iPhone, make that movie, because in the end, it's all about the story. It's all about what you have to say, what your voice is as a storyteller. And so, yeah, I say certainly go ahead and make that film. But be realistic about it in that no one's going to be looking for you. You have to look for them. We currently live in a state where, like I said, there's media oversaturation. Everybody's making movies, but it's always been the same, the way it was 50 years ago, in that no one is looking for you. You have to seek the big boys in order to get to that state where you can be on that big scale. The advantage of being on that big scale is that you certainly get more known, and you get the budget and the recognition to be able to do whatever you want to do.
Right.
On a smaller scale, you could do whatever you want to do. Nobody says anything to you. But the downside of that is that there isn't that gatekeeper, like you said, to tell you, okay, you're worthy, moving on to this next step. Right. You could get better, you can improve with your work, and online is great. I mean, there's certainly tons of great filmmakers who are online and doing big things right now, like Philip Bloom and Ryan Conley of Film Riot, and they all got their start through the internet.
Right.
And they're making their way higher and higher as their careers progress. That's 1 in a million, though, because like I said, so many people are doing it. It's all about breaking through that herd and standing out with your voice, not just even through quality, but through, do you have that it factor? Mm-hmm. And that's really hard to ask yourself that, because you don't know if you have that it factor. The audience kind of determines if you are that it factor.
Right. And do you think that the hard work trumps talent in most cases? Obviously there's always a genius out there, but I see that you've been working so much in the last 8 years or so. So I think you seem to be a pretty hard worker. Do you think that that's gonna give you an edge with your career as you progress?
Yeah, no, I think anyone who works hard, I think if anybody has a specific talent in something, even if they're not necessarily very good at it first, if they have that little inkling of talent and they have the determination and drive, they could certainly progress and grow to the point where they could be the next Stanley Kubrick. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because, I think, I'm not saying that anyone can do filmmaking, but I think anybody who has the drive and the talent to work hard and to just keep going, I think anybody in that sense, they could get into filmmaking and find relatively good success in doing it. Mm-hmm. So I think hard work definitely does triumph over talent. Talent certainly helps, right, and you have to have a gift, you have to be born with it, but I think that talent, that skill can be honed over time to where you can become a pretty good filmmaker. I hardly consider myself great in any way, but I've had people tell me that I am. Mm-hmm. So I never really know how to feel about it. I just see myself as somebody who is I'm just like you and I. I just see myself on the same level. I don't see myself higher or lower. I see myself as just someone who's just working hard and trying my best to make this into my dream into a reality.
Cool. So, Chris, I have a note here to ask you about rejection. After rejection, so, you get rejected, you suffer sometimes or not, but my question is about after rejection, how you move on from the rejection you got. That's something that you don't look at it anymore, or you focus on something else. So what's your take on that?
Well, when I first started, I would look at it exactly as you put it. You kind of you suffer a little bit, you want to cry and all these things. Nowadays, though, I just move on. I just think, all right, it happened, let's move on. And so sometimes, though, I will ask for feedback from the person that did reject me, and I try to use that as my learning experience to grow and learn. Because I think the initial response is you want to respond in anger, and you want to contact the festival or whoever rejected you and give them like an angry email or a phone call, but it's not worth it. It's not professional. It's not worth it. And what do you gain out of it? And then the next time you submit to them, they'll remember you. They won't forget you. Then that will reflect on you, no matter how good your film is. So my advice, move on, forget about it, and just focus on your craft. The minute you start thinking about the rejection, the minute that you start putting yourself in a position where you just can't go on. You wasted so much energy. It's the next one will be better. That's what I say.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that once when you do that, on a way you become kind of that you can accomplish anything you really want? Once when you put that aside, and if life goes your way, eventually you will reach whatever your goal is, winning an Oscar or whatever that might be. Do you think that it's really, it's probably a stupid question, but do you think that that's kind of key for people not to give up after 20 or 30 years of trying their dreams?
No, it's not a stupid question at all. No, I think there has to be a certain point where if you're doing this for 20 or 30 years and, everything is still the same, I think then you might have to face reality. Unfortunately, I'm sure that's a tough situation.